Are we good? Good. Well, welcome to everybody here in the room. This is the first time that we're doing a, what's that? Oh, is this me? Go ahead and pop those questions in there and we'll be able to do it so that our advocates who will have up here soon will be able to answer. If you have any other questions, put it in there and I'll actually be monitoring the Zoom. I could have introduced myself, which would help as well. I am Carrie Clark. I'm the Executive Director of Alternatives to Violence. So welcome for joining us today during this Shining a Light on Domestic Violence in our community. It's Domestic Violence Awareness Month. This is how we spread the word. I want to thank our staff who have gone on for this month to be able to get things out in the community and really share awareness about domestic violence. So our non-residential outreach coordinator, Mary Gay Barnes, who we'll meet later, has organized many of these events, as well as our outreach committee that we've got, and Amanda Mitchell, who I'm going to have come up here in a minute. Amanda is our volunteer and training manager. She does all of our trainings and really educates everybody on domestic violence, as well as our advocates, who we will introduce in a little bit. But for now, we'll get started with our presentation on domestic violence. We'll then move into a survivor story we have, and we'll introduce our survivor when Amanda is finished with the presentation. And then we will move into our panel with our advocates that we work with and asking questions about domestic violence. So now I will introduce our volunteer and training manager, Amanda Mitchell, who will continue our education.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here, both in person and all of you joining us through Zoom. I appreciate you taking time out of a weeknight to spend 2 hours to learn about domestic violence, about what we do at ATV to combat that, and also what this looks like in your community. What can we do in our community to combat this? So we're going to talk about several of those things this evening. So first, I like to start with, well, who are we? What is ATV? What do we do? So to start with, to tell you who we are is to tell you our mission statement, which is Alternatives to Violence, provide shelter, advocacy, education, and resources for people impacted by domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. It's a lot, but that is very true. This is what we're doing every day. Our vision is that we envision a world without any of these: domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. But until then, we are warriors. We go out every day and we are fighting for our clients. We are located in Loveland. We've been here since 1982. When I talk to volunteers or talk in training, I always like to talk about our history because we are an older agency. We've been around almost 40 years. That's a long time. But we only had a safe house since 2016. So 5.5 years, or it just turned 5 years. It was October. So 5 years. So even though our safe house has been around a long and we've been offering resources and referrals to individuals, our safe house is kind of a toddler. We're still growing, we're still learning, we're still changing things, and we have really great advocates who help our clients every day with that. We are supported at ATV through grants and local donors. We have several groups who donate to us monthly and help our clients. And we also have a grants manager who works very hard to make sure we have grants that can fund our staff and fund other things for our clients. And we have probably between 16 and 20 people at any given time employed by ATV. And we also have a very large volunteer population, between about 25 and 35 volunteers. And we have a couple of interns this semester, which is awesome. We love our interns as well. And we, again, like I said, have a large volunteer pool. So what do we do at ATV? We like to talk about it in SOS form because that's safety, options, and stability. The safety piece is our 24-hour crisis line. We have a line that's ringing 24 hours. This is how a lot of our clients are coming to us. They call and they say, I need help. I don't know what to do. I don't know if this is not okay, but they know something's wrong. And so we have advocates who are there 24 hours a day answering this phone. So as you can imagine, we're busy right now with the pandemic. We've seen our numbers double in some months, triple in some cases. And so we're very busy on the crisis line right now. We offer emergency shelter to individuals who are fleeing imminent danger. And most of those individuals are involved in a domestic violence relationship, but at ATV, we also work with other victims of crime. So sometimes they may be in our safe house as well. We also offer emergency services through Loveland PD. We have a memorandum of understanding with them that when they go out on a call, if the survivor at that moment wants to talk to someone, they call us, they page us out. We go out on scene, we talk to them. We're going to tell them what's going to happen next, because there's so much in Colorado about domestic violence and the law that a lot of people don't know. So we're going to explain some of that. We're going to talk about bond. We're going to talk about mandatory protection orders. And the biggest piece, we're going to safety plan. The options we offer both advocacy and support and adult and child programs. So everyone who comes to ATV is offered advocacy. We have both non-residential advocacy services and residential advocacy services that we offer our clients. And we have programs not just for adults, but for children too. So if a parent comes into our safe house with their child, we have a child advocate who can work specifically with that child at that moment, because they have a different need from the parent, and the case manager works with the parent. So that way they both get what they need. The stability piece, we offer community education, which is what you're doing right now. That's a large piece of what we offer, going out into the community and talking about this, spreading the awareness about this in education. We have an amazing housing program. You'll get to meet our housing manager later tonight, has done a fantastic job of just getting clients in housing. We know housing is terrible in Colorado. It's terrible everywhere, but Northern Colorado, it's rough. And so working with a client who's leaving, who maybe hasn't worked in a while, or maybe they have children they need to schedule around, it's difficult. So she really works through those avenues with clients to help them get the best that they need, all of their needs met. We offer support groups. Mary Gay Barnes, who will be joining us later too, she has a support group on Thursday nights, and it is client-led. So they work together and they're working through some of the healing pieces of their therapeutic work with ATV. And then non-residential support and advocacy is such a huge part of what we do, because yes, we have a safe house, but we only have 8 bedrooms and 22 beds. That's not a lot. And we have some people who just come in and they say, hey, I just want to talk to someone. Maybe they're not ready to leave. Maybe they can't leave, or they're not going to leave. Maybe they've been assaulted. They just want to talk to someone. And that's what our non-residential team is for. We have that set up. And we also offer some basic life skills training. I know for a while, Pragita was doing some training through Allstate and some basic learning how to balance a checkbook and some basic life skills that they need. Also resume, we can help with different services like that. So we do have some life skills training as well. So that's kind of in a whole of what we do at ATV. I just like to explain that to people, because not a lot of people know, or they just assume we only work with victims of domestic violence, and that's not true either. Now I want to talk a little bit about Northern Colorado and stats for the year. So we looked at statistics in Loveland and in Northern Colorado, and I wanted to share some of those with you so you can see what this looks like where we live. In Loveland, in 2020, there was a total of 237 victims of a violent crime. Of those, For intimate partner violence, sexual assault, intimate partner violence is another way of saying domestic violence. For the sexual assault of those, 13. Intimate partner violence, aggravated assault, 39, for a total of intimate partner violence crimes in Loveland, 52 out of that 237. I'm a former math teacher, so I love numbers. And this is a number that makes me very sad though. 22%. 22% of the crime that happened in Loveland last year was domestic violence. That is almost a quarter. Now, let's look at Larimer County. Same type of statistics. Looking at total victims of crime, we had 252 for all of Larimer County. And this is excluding Loveland, by the way. This is not including anything in Loveland Town or Fort Collins Town. This is outside in Larimer County. For the intimate partner violent sexual assault, there were 12. And for aggravated assault, there were 29. So there were a total of 42 in our county. And that is a statistic of about 17%. You're very closely closing in on 20%, which is a fifth of all of those crimes. So this is a big problem. And it's not just a big problem everywhere else, it's a big problem right here in Northern Colorado. And we just don't talk about this enough. So we're going to talk about it a little bit tonight. And I hope you have a better understanding of what this can look like. And that now you know you can tell others. So this is kind of planting seeds. So let's talk about domestic violence. What is domestic violence? How do we define that? A lot of times when we say domestic violence, people get a picture in their head. And a lot of time that picture is of a female with maybe a black eye or a bruised lip. There's usually some type of physical trauma that we picture. But that's not in fact what usually is what we usually see. And we do see those things, but we see so much more. We define domestic violence at ATV as a pattern of behavior in which one individual attempts to exert power and control over another individual in a current or former intimate relationship. It's very important to understand this is the law as it stands in Colorado. Okay, Colorado, it must be between an intimate partner or a former intimate partner. When I say intimate partner, that does not automatically mean sex though. Okay, I want to make sure we're clear on that. That means you've had a relationship with this person. Okay, so I get that question a lot with teens. Mary Gay gets that question with teens. Well, but if we're not having an intimate relationship, is that still an intimate partner? Yes, if you have a relationship where you are going steady or boyfriend or girlfriend, whatever the words may be, that is an intimate relationship. The words I really want you to picture here and see, I've underlined and made a different color because they're very important to this definition. Pattern of behavior and power and control. Domestic violence is not about drugs. It's not about alcohol. It's not about, having a bad day. It's about power and control and the need to exert that over another individual. And it is a pattern. This is not a one-time event. It happens over and over. And it usually starts very subtle and it's hard to even notice. And they may stop for a minute and say, that was a little weird. Maybe they're just having a bad day, but the next day it happens again, plus something else. It increases and it kind of just goes in that cycle. It's also referred to as intimate partner violence. I just want to make sure we do understand that. That is the term that is used more in college now, especially in schools, graduate programs, they're using more IPV because if you think about it, I know when I was little, long time ago, 80s, domestic violence was something I remember hearing, and I always thought it meant you had to be married. And I think so many of us still had that kind of picture in our head. It's a relationship that you have to be married to that person, and that's not the case. Well, in looking at it now, domestic, and a lot of people hear the word domestic and they think married in a domicile. You're sharing, you're married, you're connected. That's not necessarily the case. Okay, so intimate partner violence is a broader term to describe that. There is a legal definition that we use in Colorado, and I like to talk about ours specifically because it's a shortened version of this. The legal definition, as you can see, is quite a bit longer. Now, what I want you to notice on this, though, are 5 words, and I bolded those words and underlined them. Because when the police are going to a scene of a domestic violence dispute, when they're called to a scene, there are several things that are happening. First, so you know, the police have no discretion in Colorado. If they are called to a scene of domestic violence, they must by law make an arrest. Okay, this is why having our law enforcement officers trained and understanding this is so important. It's a big piece of what they do. Okay, and what they're looking for are these 5 words: coercion, control, punishment, intimidation, and revenge. Now, hearing those, is anything physical listed? They could turn physical. You could coerce someone physically or control someone physically. But this is important to see because so many of us think it has to be physical for the police to help, and that is not the case at all. If you are being coerced, if you are being controlled or intimidated, that is violence, and the police will respond to that. This is what they're looking for on scene, okay? Some basic facts about domestic violence. Some of these are a little hard to see because the numbers are so large, and you see these numbers and we're like, why aren't we doing more? But that's why we're here. That's why we're doing this. 1 in 3 women will experience domestic violence in their lifetime. 1 in 4 men will experience the same. These numbers have gone up quite a bit in the past 5 years since I've been in the field. They've gone, for men, it was 1 in 14 when I first started. Now it's 1 in 4. Now, do we think more men are being abused? No, but they're reporting. They're saying this is not okay. Men are finally saying it's not okay to be abused. I can be abused just like a female can be abused. And we work with all individuals who are experiencing violence. We do not care about their gender, male, female, non-binary, transgender individual. We are just there to support them. On a typical day, DV agencies across the nation receive over 20,000 calls. Now, it felt like we received them all yesterday when I was in the office. Yesterday was just kind of a crazy day, and it seemed like we were getting call after call after call. So imagine 30,000 agencies getting the same amount of calls. Alcohol, drug use, and mental health do not make people abusers. Now, they can exacerbate it. They can make it much worse. They don't cause this. It is about power and control. And domestic violence affects every population, gender, age, and socioeconomic status. We could keep going with those, right? It affects everyone. This is not something that just affects people in indigent populations, people who live in poverty, people who live in mansions. This affects everyone in between. And this is what we really need to be thinking about. The questions should not be about the victim. They should be about the abuser, right? So why is the abuser doing this? Why don't they stop? Because we hear that question, well, why don't they leave? It is so easy to say those words. It is not easy when you have obstacle after obstacle after obstacle. So now let's talk about why abuse occurs. This was something that we just started adding into the training because before it was kind of like, we didn't talk about it as much, why this is occurring. We talked more about how we're going to combat this and move forward, but we need to understand this a little bit, right? We need to understand why is this occurring? And there's quite a few reasons. One of the biggest is it's a cycle of abuse that these people are witnessing as children and repeating as adults. Maybe they saw their parents work through a cycle of abuse and they think that's normal. And so now they're an adult and they do it as well. A lack of empathy. In order to really be empathetic, that doesn't mean feeling for someone, that means feeling with them and being with them in that moment. And you can't harm someone and hurt them if you really love them and care about them. That's just, it's opposite of what of what you really need. Empathy is required. And empathy is something we learn as children. It's something we learned in the sandbox, playing with our friends and on the playground and in classes and from our parents and from our churches and our leaders. This is something we've learned. But this is something very, very, very difficult to teach an adult that has not developed these skills. Feelings of entitlement. We do live in an entitlement society. We live in a little bit of a rape culture society where we're owed. That's owed to us. And some people feel that in a relationship. You're married to me, I own you. We're in a relationship, I own you. You don't have rights. Those are mine now. You want a phone? Okay, but I get to see who you call. I get to see what you do. It's that feeling that you have the right to take the rights of others. Lack of boundaries, such a big one, right? Such a big one. Being in a relationship means respecting your partner. It means respecting their boundaries and what they need. And so when you tell your partner, I need some space, I want some alone time, and they keep showing up, that's not boundaries. Those are very blurred. That's a big red flag. You know, you need your time, you need your space, and your partner needs to be able to give you that. That's an equitable relationship. Toxic behaviors. Now, a lot of people will say toxic masculinity. And the reason we don't want to just say toxic masculinity is it's not just masculinity. This is toxic behavior. Can a female have really toxic behaviors? Oh, yes, they can. Just like a male. So it's not just toxic masculinity. Now, we aren't doing our boys a favor in our country by not allowing them to feel emotion in a lot of cases, right? They have to be tough. They have to be, masculine and manly. We need to allow our boys and our girls to feel, to have these emotions as children so they don't grow up with this type of toxic behavior. And some barriers to leaving. So now we've talked a little bit about why they stay. So here's some barriers. These are big. Fear. Fear of the unknown, of losing security that you have at the moment, even though that may sound strange to you. I have heard a client say, I would rather stay and know my kids have a roof and we have food and these things than leave and not be able to provide for them and be homeless on the street. That's a huge obstacle. Fear is huge. Love. Love, we all hear love it's the most powerful emotion. It is. Think about the person you love more than anyone in the world. And I want you to think about that person hurting you. Would you stay? That's what we need to think about. And that's what our clients are dealing with. So we need to be very respectful of that too. We don't need to call clients perps and other names like that in front of our clients' partners. That we need to refer to them like they refer to them, because we're trying to build rapport here. No judgment. That's judgment. Okay. Security in the known. Again, have you spent the night on the street in Colorado in October? Because a lot of our clients have. And they've done it because they had nowhere else to go. So clients stay for the security and knowing that they have a safe place. I've heard a client say, it's okay to be slapped a few times if I know my kids are okay. And that's what they're facing. And we need to be respectful of and understand these things. Lack of financial stability. When we talk about types of abuse, we're going to talk about this a little bit, but we know Northern Colorado is very expensive. We're very privileged to live here. So imagine trying to leave. And I like to use myself as an example. I consider myself an educated person. I have 3 children. I have a good job. But if I had to leave my partner and find a new place to live and all of these things, I don't know if I could alone. It's very difficult. So again, financial stability, it's huge. If you know that your children are going to sleep on the street that night, or that you're going to have to stay in maybe an unsafe shelter, maybe a homeless shelter because you couldn't get in somewhere else, it's unsafe feeling, you may stay for that lack of financial stability. And lack of support from family and friends. Now, we've all had a friend that's been in a relationship like this. I remember in college saying to my friend, I'm done. When you're done, we'll talk. And I feel terrible about that now, because now I know that me abandoning her just made her move into his arms further. So when we abandon the people we love who are in abusive relationships, our friends, our family, when we say tough love, when you give that up, I'm here, what we're really doing is driving them into the arms of their abuser. They have no other choice. Shame and embarrassment. This is huge, right? Our clients come in usually with their head down, feeling pretty bad. So part of our job is we treat them like anyone else. Hey, how are you doing today? Would you like some water? Can I get you something to drink? Come on in. We're going to have a conversation. Okay. To be judgment-free is difficult, but that's our job, is to listen without that judgment. Children and pets are a huge piece of why people do not leave abusive relationships. Children can be used as anchors in a relationship, and they could also be used as a threat. Not just maybe children that they share with their abusive partner, but think about if they have a child by someone else, and now they're in a relationship that's abusive. That child's life is in extreme danger because that child is taking attention away from the abusive partner. So definitely. Pets. We had a pet parade a couple of weeks ago. It was so much fun. We had some pets there, and Mary Gay did a great job of getting some signs up talking about, I think it's 70% of individuals who have pets don't leave because of their pets. Is that the right number, Mary Gay, that we came up with? I think it's there. So you can imagine our animals are our family. Right? I know my puppies, I love my children. I love my puppies, they're like our family. So how can you leave if there's nowhere for them to go? We're very fortunate at ATV. We work with a grant that helps us assist individuals with placing their pets in kennel situations while they stay with us, and they're not charged. So we do have that. But sometimes it could be hard to access. Maybe they don't have room. So as you can imagine, this can definitely cause issues. And immigration status, especially in the past few years, this has been something we're seeing more and more. The threat, from the partner, I'll just call ICE. They'll just come pick you up. You'll never see the kids again. Would you report? And a lot of our clients, you need to understand, a lot of people in that immigration status that maybe are not documented, they're brought here with a promise. They're brought here with the promise of love, sometimes marriage, and then they're brought here and they're made to stay in a home and clean and kind of be a servant. And when they mention, hey, sponsoring me for a visa, anything like that, it's, well, you can complain, I'll just call ICE. It's that easy. And then they're trapped. And now they're in a country where they know no one. They're brought over here under false pretenses, and they can't go home either. And gaslighting. Gaslighting is where an individual works to make another individual feel like maybe they're crazy or losing it, placing things in different areas, moving items, saying that something didn't happen after it did. These are all great examples of gaslighting. And gaslighting is huge with our clients, to the point where sometimes when our clients come in, they will even say, I think this happened to me. I know this did. You've got to believe me. And we do, because so many times they haven't been believed, or they've been told this never happened. This never happened. So then they need that validation that this actually did happen, and that's something we're able to do. So those are some barriers to leaving when we're looking at domestic violence. Now let's talk about types of abuse for just a few moments. I like to talk about 6 types of abuse first. And these are ones that you've heard about. These are the most common types of abuse that we see. And they are physical, mental and emotional, which can also be psychological, verbal, sexual, financial or economic, and stalking. Now, I want to point this out. Physical is the one we hear the most about, but it's not the one we see the most. The one we see more than anything, and in almost in every domestic violence relationship, is mental and emotional abuse. You cannot abuse someone without being mentally and emotionally abusive. You can't hit someone and then smile and everything's fine. That person's not fine. Mentally and emotionally, they are dealing with massive trauma. So even though we hear about physical the most, it's not the most common we do see. We see mental in every situation. Verbal is very common. This is usually how abuse starts, with the mental and verbal abuse. It starts by name calling. It starts by gaslighting. It starts by putting them down, saying things. Sexual abuse is one that we see quite often, probably in about half of our clients, but we don't talk about it a lot. And we don't talk about it because of that old wives' tale that, you can't be raped in marriage, and that's just not true. You can be assaulted in a relationship. You can be raped in a relationship. And that is something that helps individuals keep control over that other individual. They are going to try mental abuse, verbal, financial, maybe even stalking. But if those don't work, that's where sexual and physical come in. That's where those start. Because they've tried the other options, now they move to the hardcore pieces. Financial abuse happens so often. Almost all of our clients come in, they've been financially abused as well. This was a big shock when I first started in this field. I didn't realize how many people were being financially abused. And then stalking. Stalking is something that originally, when I heard stalking, I'm older, so I automatically think of like the trench coat and the hat and the binoculars. Does that happen? Yes, that does happen. But what I'm talking about more of, I don't have it up here. I usually hold up my phone. It's so easy to find someone with that tiny little piece of electronics. There are location devices on there, services on there. People can put fake apps on your phone. They can record you. They can do all kinds of things. So it's so easy to stalk someone just by a phone or social media. Look at social media. A few years ago, I was driving to work and I passed a Starbucks and it said, "Hey, your friend Carrie is in Starbucks." It came up on my phone and I was so freaked out. Like, this is creepy. Like, it's showing me where my friends are. This is creepy. But do you know how many abusers use that to find them, their victims? So these are the 6 we talk about the most, but I want to share 4 other types that all could fall. These 4 could fall in these, but I really wanted to point these out because these are some things we see specifically. The first is religious or cultural abuse. In certain cultures and certain religions, it's okay to put your hands on your spouse. It's okay to have that type of dominance. So we have someone who comes in from that culture. We need to learn about that culture. We need to talk to them about it. We need to learn how to work with them because this is not something we're familiar with. And we could think we're doing all the right things and we could be saying the total wrong things to someone, right? So we want to make sure that we are being very respectful of their religious and cultural beliefs, but also that understanding that you can be abused in this. Systems abuse is one that is used quite a bit, but we never talk about. And that is using our government systems, our judicial systems, to abuse your partner. So say you share children. I'll just tell the judge that you're abusing the kids. They'll give me full custody. Well, now we're bringing it into a court. Now we're using systems to abuse our partner. Using ICE to keep someone in check and scared. Using systems to abuse your partner. The third one is digital abuse, which we talked about a little bit when we're talking about phones. But that is also a big piece of that right now is revenge porn. We've heard a lot about that. And that is where you take very possibly nudes or other photos that are less than ideal to be shared with everyone. And they're sharing them with everyone. They're posting them on Facebook, posting them on Instagram, and so digitally abusing your partner. And the last one is identity abuse. And I just wanted to touch on that because that's in our LGBTQ plus communities mainly. So outing someone, outing your partner to their family, or the threat of that. It's terrifying. In this day and age, you would think that working in LGBTQ plus community, we wouldn't have that, but we do. We still have this, where individuals are terrified to let their family know because maybe their family isn't supportive. Maybe they'll turn their back on them. And a lot of times they do that to isolate them more. Okay. So these are some types of abuse. This is what we work with every day. All of our advocates could each one probably point and tell you a case for each type of this abuse that we see. So now we know what it looks like. We know what it is. We know why people don't leave. We know the obstacles. So how can we help? What do we do? That's why we're here. The biggest piece is listening. And I know that sounds small, but let me tell you, sitting with someone who has told you their partner is harming them, and you look at them and say, wow, that's not okay. No one deserves that. You don't deserve that. You may be the first person who's validated that. You may be. Listening has so much value. We need to have empathy when we listen. Think about, what would you do? How would you respond in these situations? When they're talking, don't interrupt, listen. And sometimes this is hard for us, especially as advocates, because we want to help and we're like, yeah, and we want to show we're listening. So sometimes maybe we just need to step back, let them tell their story. Listen. Let them tell their story. Believe them. That validation, again, you may be the first person who's ever said that's not okay, and I believe you. Do you know what a relief, what a weight lifted off someone's shoulders that is? Just to have someone saying, I believe you. It's a, we've seen clients actually physically decompress after saying those words, I believe you. Refer them to ATV or another agency. We're not always going to be the best fit. Maybe you're down in Colorado Springs. We have agencies down there. Maybe you're in Utah. We have agencies there. But refer them somewhere. Say, have you talked to someone? Have you talked to an agency? Have you talked to ATV? Now, you can always give them our number. We will talk to anyone who calls us. We may not be close, but we will find somewhere to refer them. Okay, we'll look that up. You can also assist through education and awareness. What you're doing now is a huge piece of that. Just attending trainings and educational events so you know more about these issues that are going on, not just in our state, in our neighborhoods. And tell others what you learned. I always say after these, your seed planners. I used to give out seed packets. I ran out of those, but I used to give those out because you're a seed planner now. You have knowledge that you can share with others. But this is something I do want to say, we always want to say. If you see an incident occurring, please do not step in. That is such extreme danger. You could not only hurt yourself, but that person could be severely harmed for that. And it could make it worse for the person. What you can do is take a license plate number. You can call 911. If they go to the bathroom, you can always, hey, I just want to see if you're okay. I've given people cards in a bathroom before. Those are things you can do, but never confront that situation head on because you're putting yourself in danger too. And the last piece of this is you can offer resources and referrals. So in order to do that, you just need to know the resources in your community. What do we have? So knowing that ATV, we work with domestic violence, sexual assault, and trafficking, knowing that, knowing SAVA is here for sexual assault, knowing the Avery Center for, they work in human trafficking. So knowing some of the local resources. If you don't know, we're happy to tell you, call us and you can say, hey, I just want to know some resources. I have someone who has a question about this. We can assist you with that. Be a safe place for someone to talk. That's such an important piece. At work, we are always a safe place, but not just at your jobs. Do it in your personal life, Do it with your friends and family. Do it in your community. Be a safe place. And the last piece, expect that these conversations may be uncomfortable, not just for you, but for the victim as well. These are not comfortable conversations, but they're necessary conversations. Having these conversations gives us power, and it gives our clients power. And that's a big piece of it, is that empowerment. We need to have more conversations. We need to be more comfortable with these conversations because they're not easy. This is not an easy subject to talk about. We always joke that we're the last people people talk to at parties because, you know, who wants to really talk about domestic violence all the time? But we're very passionate about what we do. We want others to know what we do so they can assist, so they can tell other people. And the more people we tell, the more we can spread that to our community. Questions? Any questions on the PowerPoint or anything I just went over? Sorry about that. All right. Well, now I am going to step away for a few moments, but first I want to introduce our guest speaker for tonight. Tonight we have Miss Allie Riley. She is Mrs. Colorado Petite and will be joining us to tell us about her story. So Allie, if you want to join us. Thank you, Allie. Thank you.
You make these super easy to put on. Don't recommend doing a pageant if you don't know how to do it. All right. So my name's Allie. The whole reason why I'm here, I actually won Mrs. Colorado Petite. So a really cool thing about that is petite, no size, it's height. So, right? So your height would be like 5'5" and shorter. So it could be any height. But anyway, so to get onto that, we had to pick a platform, and I decided to pick domestic violence because I do have a past with it. So I'm here to share my story, but as I share, I don't want you guys to feel sorry for me. Like, I don't want any sorries because you know what, it made me the person I am today. And it's neat because my daughter got to learn a lot from it. Not that she was in the situation, but she was. I mean, my family was in this situation. My mom is here. She got to witness a lot of it as well. So just that, I mean, family is a part of it, not just your abuser. So mine started when I was 18 years old. Just graduated high school. This guy, I mean, come on, ladies, men, we find the guy of our dreams. Like, it's so cool because we're like, hey, they paid attention to us, right? That was my case. I got his attention. So we were dating, 19 years old. I got pregnant with my daughter. Greatest thing that ever happened out of all of that, but you know, there's a story to that. So when I was 19, we met through mutual friends. I got pregnant. I did start to see the flags, red flags. We all ignore them because we don't want to accept it because I thought he wasn't that person. So I began to lie for him. I covered up for him. I mean, we moved into my parents' house because I was pregnant. You know, I would hide things from them. I would hide things from friends. I mean, I lost a lot of friends. We did have a beautiful daughter, and I thought the right thing to do was to get married because you have a child. I did everything backwards. I was like, okay, let's get married. It's the correct thing to do. Well, my abuse started way before we were even married. It started when I was pregnant with her. I mean, there's a number of walls that my head I met. It's not fun. He would throw me through walls. He would choke me until I passed out. He would lock me in my room. So, I mean, you hear these stories. It is true. Like, it's not just abuse. Like, it started with mental, then it started with physical. He would stand outside the door yelling for hours. I tried to ignore it and pretend it was all okay because, you know, he was always sorry. Sorry is that magic word. I mean, you say you're sorry, everything's okay. You're going to go back to normal. It was convincing. I did believe him. One night, he was drunk. We were at my parents' house. He was yelling. So my sister came in and got my dad just because he was drunk. We were just trying to get him out of the house. Well, it started off with a fight in our living room. My daughter Haley was in my ex-husband's arms. My dad was just trying to get her away to get him to leave. Well, he pulled out bear mace. So I got maced, my daughter got maced, my sister got maced, my mom even got it. So finally, my daughter was a ping pong ball, back and forth, back and forth. They were hitting each other. I was the one taking all the hits from everybody. We finally got her free. She went upstairs. I mean, the only reason we called 911 was she was foaming at the mouth. Like, she wasn't breathing. We didn't care to press charges. We just wanted him gone. And that didn't happen. I mean, he did get arrested. And the crappy thing, so this happened in Washington. The crappy thing is my dad got arrested in this situation too, because there was a game camera up in our front yard with flashed, and my dad just kind of pushed it away and it broke. And the officer said, "Whose camera is this?" And my dad said, "I don't know, I think it's her husband's." So they arrested my dad right then and there for some stupid thing. We were able to get that dropped, but he broke my ankle at the time. I was taken to the hospital. The officer there came into the room and literally threatened me that if I was lying, he was gonna arrest me right then and there for domestic violence. Yeah, because, you know, I just decided to break everything. I don't know, great. So anyways, fast forward, we moved to Colorado. We worked out everything. Yes, I did drop the charges because it was just a long, lengthy process. Like, I didn't feel the law was on my side. They made you feel like a victim. Like, they would question you. They would make you stand in the room with him. It was uncomfortable. So I just dropped it because I didn't want to deal with it. I thought moving to Colorado would make everything better. Well, we got our own place. He got mad again and he kicked my arm. That broke it in 2 places. I didn't press charges then because of how I felt back in Washington. So because the charges were dropped, he still had to do his domestic violence classes, his alcohol classes, and his abuse classes. So he finally went back because he missed his grandpa, I guess. He went back and I was able to finally file for abuse because divorce, because it took so many years. He was down there. And he would threaten the reason why I actually didn't, because he was threatening my family. He would threaten to put him in jail, do something with them, come and take my daughter. So I was able to get a divorce. So that was great. Like I said, this happened for years. I mean, different things. Like, luckily I was the one working, so financial wasn't an option, but just mental, physical, emotional. I mean, it's crazy. Like, literally to this day, I feel like I'm crazy. Like, I will bump into somebody and be like, "I am so sorry. Like, please, I'm so sorry." And it's just something that does stay with you and it lingers, and it's the worst thing that you can really deal with. But we were divorced on August 14th. So I do call that my physical freedom day because I was able to leave that abuse and get away from everything. I mean, yeah, it was hard to get away from everything, but it's not easy. Like, someone will tell you just to walk away. It's not that simple. It takes someone 7 times to walk away from that relationship to finally be done. But yeah, that is my story. So if you guys ever want to try out for Mrs. Colorado Petite, there's cool things. I'm going to go back to a really positive thing. There's different classes. There's like a Miss, an MIS, teen, Miss Petite. Actually, you should do it. One of our girls, she was a client of mine. I'm a photographer. She actually won Miss Petite, and she is actually a victim of domestic violence too. So it's pretty neat to be able to walk close with her. So that is my story. So just listen. Like, if anybody comes up to you, don't ever tell them to walk away. Just listen. That does a lot more than what you really think it is. So I appreciate you guys listening to me today. It was nice to meet everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Allie. I love hearing stories like that and seeing this amazing woman and where she is now and how strong and resilient she is. And this is just one story out of a million, and her story matters. So thank you for listening. Thank you for being here, Allie. We really appreciate it. Yes, thank you. Now I would like to have our advocates from ATV join us up here, and we are going to have questions. So at this time, if you have any questions, if you're on Zoom, if you want to type it into the chat box, that would be great. But this is time for questions. So anything you want to know about what we do, about domestic violence, about specifically their position at ATV, we can talk about those things. Once they're all up here, I'll take a moment to introduce them. Oh, yeah.
maybe if you all want to start from left to right or whatever, and give your name and what your position is and how long you've been with AT.
My name is Mary Gay Barnes, and I am the non-residential
Hang on
outreach,
1 second, Mary.
and I dance too.
There we go. We have to switch your camera.
So you dance too?
My name is Mary Gay Barnes, and I'm the non-residential outreach coordinator at Alternatives to Violence.
My name is Jessie Kohlauer and I'm the non-residential program manager at Alternatives to Violence.
My name is Jillian Coleman. I am one of the case managers within our safe house at Alternatives to Violence.
I'm Brigitte Thapa. I am the residential program manager and have been with ATV for 5 years.
And you all might need to speak up just a little bit because I know you cannot be very quiet. Very quiet.
We're loud normally.
Yes, in
And
normal circumstances.
so if anybody has any questions about what it's like to be an advocate about domestic violence, now would be a good time to ask. And I am gonna start off with a general question, if I can, is how do you take care of yourselves? And if you can all answer this, this is for all of you. How do you take care of yourselves and how do you feel about working with victims of domestic violence? Brigitte?
I think for me, honestly, it's my own personal time that I'm really very good with, like putting my family boundaries and my work boundaries very clearly. So I think a lot is just to do with when I leave work, I'm at home. I mean, I'm on call a lot, so that really doesn't give me a chance. But I think whatever time I do get to spend, it's very much that I think counting your blessings and just being, positive about the things that you have. And I think working with victims, survivors, I believe over the years, you just know when to support them and when to be for them. And I think that's the best that you can do. And knowing that you are doing the best at whatever you are to helping a survivor. I think that's how I usually work with most of my clients.
I mean, boundaries are definitely key. You have to leave work at work and home at home to work with victims of domestic violence. But I mean, yeah, lots of self-care. We all talk about self-care. We all do trainings on self-care. I like gardening, gotta have something fun to do, get the stress out of the way, but it's really worth it. I love working with victims of domestic violence. It's so rewarding. You get, your daily dose of, what is it? What do I call it? Humility, I guess. Just to be grateful for what you do have and understand that not everybody has that, and to help people get that and accomplish their goals is really rewarding.
There's a really cool article and it's self-care. And I think you actually sent this out, Amanda, and it was self-care is not just bubble baths.
Oh, yeah.
So one of my favorite fortes is going for drives and singing very, very loudly. Concerts in general actually are self-care for me, music in general, something I appreciate. As far as working with victims of domestic violence, everybody comes in different shapes and sizes and different challenges that they have, and being able to find out what those challenges are to being successful in the world and helping mediate and connecting folks to resources is probably my favorite piece.
I make quilts. When I sit down to my sewing machine, that's my creative station, and I shut the world out. I shut my daughter out, I shut my dogs out, I don't hear the phone, it's my world. And I can sew for hours and not even realize how long I've been at the sewing machine. That's what I do for me. I also read a lot, or there's always binging on Netflix. And working with victims of domestic violence has probably been one of the most rewarding things I've done in my life. I find that it's often a challenge to find the right resources for the right person. And so I do a lot of research, I do a lot of searching, a lot of phone calls, and I feel like, wow, I've accomplished something and I have this resource to add to my list and use it for someone else if need be. An example I can give you is we have a client that is in need of insulin because they no longer have insurance or their insurance has changed, and insulin is not cheap. And so I did a lot of research, called some pharmacies, and found ways for us to get insulin for this person. So there are ways, it's just doing the research is the biggest issue for me.
She also makes really cool bags for all
She
of her
does.
staff.
Yeah,
Take the
all of our
bags.
birthdays, we get a
Throw that out
bag.
there, yeah. We get bags.
That's
got a
our
cat.
self-care, getting married.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
I have a question from the chat box, and hopefully people online can hear me. I have a loud voice. So if not, maybe whoever answers first can repeat my question, summarize it. What is the best thing to say to someone you know is in an abusive relationship, but they deny it or make excuses?
Whew. Honestly, so the question was, if somebody is obviously in a domestic violence situation and they're denying that abuse is occurring, I would personally say, when you're ready to have that conversation, if you ever get there, we'll be there, or here's my card, here's whatever, just opening that door and making sure that they feel safe and comfortable to come in when they're ready.
And I think if somebody else can answer that, that's a good question for you, but how about people in general? So if those of us who are watching this right now, if somebody's family member or friend, they know it's obvious they're in an abusive situation, they see the abuse, what do you suggest they say to their loved one?
You know, it's honestly really difficult with trying to figure out what to say to a loved one if you know what's going on and they can't, you know, they're not there yet to discuss it or ask for help. And that's actually a challenge that we face a lot, is just that we can't help people who aren't there yet to help themselves or to ask for that help. It's incredibly difficult, but like Jessie said, a huge part of it is just to let them know that, hey, if you do need that support, I'm here. And I get it.
Also, I feel like a lot of times when I am working with a client and that situation does come up, I'm always like, you know, doing, in case things do happen in future, here are the stuff that let's just, you know, go over it. And it might not happen and I'll be very happy, but if it does, I want you to have a couple of stuff like having 911 on speed dial, having like a family or a friend that's close by, kind of, so that even if they're not expressing it to me, they have an idea what they could do when situation does happen. So that might be.
Well, and I think
a good
going off
way.
of what Amanda was saying too, like, you know, don't cut them off and say, when you're ready, then you can come talk to me, and just say, whenever that happens to be, I'll be here regardless, and come talk to me when you're ready.
And there's some great books out there on how to support, you know, people that aren't ready. And at the moment, I can't even think of one of the titles.
Why does he do
But
That's what Google's
Why-
for.
why-
Why
But
does
there
he
are
do that?
some
Why does
really
he do what
good
he
books.
does?
No, there's some really good books strictly for,
There's
Family
why
and
does he
friends.
do that?
no, that's for
Oh,
survivors.
survivors.
Those
Yeah.
are for survivors.
Yeah.
Yeah, for family and friends. And I have the list at home or at my office, and
Call us.
Tell us.
Yeah.
We have
Okay.
some- I know you guys are advocates, but we have some great responses from people joining us on
Good.
there.
Awesome.
Hey, I would say I'm here for you and whenever you're ready. And we talked about that. From somebody else, just listen, don't judge, be supportive. It's the most difficult thing to get out of the situation. Trauma bonds and codependencies are real. So.
and also realize that the person, the survivor, is going through a lot, and their emotions are all over the place. And they may talk about the fact that they feel bad for what's happened to their abuser, that they think they need to stay. And sometimes family and friends get exacerbated to the point of saying, okay, I'm done. You can't. You just need to understand that their emotions are everywhere.
Well, and something that Mary Gay taught me when I came on was, you know, the client is going to tell you how to live, like how they are going to survive this situation. And we need to listen and respect that. And that needs to be on their own time as well.
We've got a couple comments on that too that I like, and I'll go backwards on these questions, but we have one that's not a victim, always a survivor. And from Jira, who I'll start off, to go scroll back up. Hi, I'm Jira, survivor who left on March 5th, 2020 with 4 kids after almost 13 years.
Go Jira!
I find that there are laws that really need looked at and changed. Examples, someone is arrested and I think that's charged with domestic violence, not being able to be allowed bond. Do you feel that laws need changed, and any ideas where I can start with this?
Always.
Yeah.
And good luck.
Nick Carrie knows that, and she also says, I personally like being called a survivor. I was a victim before I got out,
Right.
and now I'm a survivor.
That is actually my preferred term as well. However,
Exactly.
it's very hard to utilize within the justice system, and that's how they
Mhm.
identify folks. So it's complicated, but that's the term I would use as well.
Yeah, so what do you guys think?
So
Where can you
funny
start?
story, at the police department, the person, the cop that was there, because they were gonna provide recommendations for the person being charged. And the client was, well, what are you gonna say? Like, what are you gonna recommend? And we all were like, well, if we could, it would be a lifetime, but it's not our call. And it's not even the police's call. It's the judge's call. And as far as law reform, that's on a legislative level, unfortunately, and
So what do
lobbying.
people do?
Contact
Mhm.
Colorado Organization for Victims Assistance, sorry.
COVA.
COVA. They are constantly working to change the laws
Yeah, they have lobbyists.
and violence
Yeah.
in Colorado.
They've got the
Those are the
lobbyists.
places to contact
Mhm.
if you want to help change those laws.
Yeah. Yep,
And
vote,
vote.
call your
Voting is
senators,
big.
call your reps.
It's true though. We actually literally just the other week did a training that our trainer told us, we're all working in a broken system. So I think
Mhm.
all of us inside of it know that it's broken, but if you could change it, please do.
Yeah, I wish bond wasn't even an option, but unfortunately, and to be honest, for Colorado compared to Washington, like what you were talking about, and some other states where there's even an automatic arrest, there's also an automatic protection order put in place here, that a lot of other states don't have. And so we still have room to grow and improve on, but comparatively to other states,
We're doing okay.
we're better
We're
off than
better off
others.
than others, yep.
Yeah.
There are many states who, and I was just told that they can't hear me, so I'll speak
Oh,
up a
good.
little bit. There are many states that don't consider domestic violence unless there is physical abuse. Fortunately, Colorado is not one of those states, so we're
What state?
fortunate.
I'm curious.
There's a few out there.
Oh, yeah, there are.
And people are in the South, perhaps, but yeah. So in answering some of those questions about survivors and victims, because I was skipping back and forth, Sabrina, who is on our Zoom, I apologize. Her question pertaining to that, and it's a good way to explain, is when speaking about this issue, is it better to refer to people who have experienced domestic violence as survivors or victims? And I think all of us that's a personal choice.
Whatever they want to be.
Whatever they want to be called, because some people don't yet, it's like Jared said, some people don't yet feel like survivors.
Mhm.
So we sort of respect their wishes.
And folks come in sometimes and they have that affect of I'm a victim, but I tell them like, well, you survived and you're here, and just starting that process with them to try to change some of that mentality and getting some of that guilt off their shoulders too.
And then we have Lori who commented on that. Change is difficult for everyone. We just need to be a compassionate listening ear. So that goes back to the other question. I have another question that is, if you were Allie's advocate, Allie, who just spoke for us, at the beginning of her relationship with her abuser, and she shared of her abuse, what would you have advised her? So say she came to non-residential in the
Okay.
beginning of the relationship.
So first of all, as an
Right.
advocate, it is not my life. I
Mhm.
cannot tell her what to do. She has to tell me what she needs. I would believe her. I would support her in any way that she felt she needed it, and I would give her the resources. But for me to tell her how to move forward, that is not my job.
Mhm.
I'm trauma informed, and this is all about the survivor. This is their story, their life, and what happens moving forward is up to them. I'm the navigator, they're the bus driver.
Mhm.
Would you judge, which I know you don't because you work for our agency, but would you judge Ellie for dropping the charges?
No.
Against?
No,
Is that common?
yes,
Yes.
And actually in Colorado, you can't.
No,
the charges, but, and that's actually for the survivor, their benefit.
Mhm. Well, and honestly, the short answer of Mary Gay's response is, what do you want? Like, what do you want to do? Or where are you at? We could do safety planning. We can make, I work in housing. And so I have actually worked with folks that are still in housing with their partner, whoever that happens to be. And we can actually get them into a place while they're still in housing with their abusive partner, and hopefully get them transferred directly into permanent housing.
It's about empowerment.
giving them their power back. That's the biggest thing. All that power and control that has happened for so long, they feel like they can do nothing by themselves. And being able to give them their power back, I can honestly tell you that there have been clients that have come in and I've said, what do you need me to help you do? And they will look at me like, I don't know. I said, okay, let's talk about what your most need is right this minute as we speak. You know, tell me what it is. Do you need me to help you find a safe place to be? Do you need me to help you find food and clothes? Do you need me to help you find housing? Do you need me to help you? What is it you need from me? And then they can see, oh, well, what do I need right now? And then we talk about, okay, so what do you think you might need tomorrow? And after we cover that, then it's, what do you think you might need next week? The other thing I always do with my clients is I give them a notebook and a pen and my card stapled to the front so that they can write everything down, because trauma brain does not remember.
It's real.
Mhm.
Trauma brain does not remember what I tell them within the next 30 seconds. They may not remember it. So I make sure things get written down for them. I tell them to use it as a book to write down their feelings, whatever they need to, their appointments, so that they have something to keep track of their life until they have that control back and that power to do it on their own.
Okay, here's a really good question that I am excited. Oh, sorry.
Allie's mom had a question, I think.
Oh, yeah, well, I just want to say, as a parent, what do you guys suggest? Because her father and I did support her. We told her she did not have to get married. So again, my husband lives, I don't know if you know this, your dad really wanted you to break up with them. But anyway, all you can be there to support them. I felt more like I was picking up pieces until she decides
Right.
And that's,
you can only be there for her.
Yeah.
That's all you can do.
But as a parent, is there more that I could have done?
No.
As a parent, it's actually incredibly difficult in that position,
Mhm.
especially when you do what you did, which is all you can do. And there's actually, we get calls pretty frequently
from
from
families.
families asking
Mhm.
for support groups
Yeah.
for them,
Friends.
because it's not easy.
And it's very common to become angry.
It's not easy, and I know he threatened our family. That was one
Yep.
of the reasons why she dropped the charges, said that we were gonna be shot or in the woods because he was a hunter. You know, I told her, listen, don't worry about that, we'll take care of him, because he was also hot air too, but, you know, and as Lisa said, the whole family got pepper sprayed. And so it's hard,
It is.
especially watching your very social, happy daughter become depressed.
Well,
Yep.
she's become awesome.
Yeah.
She has always been awesome.
That doesn't help, but really support is big, and
Yeah.
the ladies here are correct that we get lots of phone calls from parents who are angry. They're angry at their children for not leaving, and I need to tell them, you need to call and tell them that they need to leave. And that is about the worst thing
Yeah,
that you
and
can do.
because her dad was always, let make her leave. I'm like, I can't make her leave
Right.
until she's ready.
Right.
Right.
Well, and it would have been significantly worse if you had said, you know what, when you're ready, finally let me know. It would have escalated worse, I'm sure.
Allie may
We
have
know.
You on how she probably felt very supportive by what you did, even though you may not have felt that. She probably-
I don't know, because I know at one point she felt like we were judging her, which.
Oh, and they're,
never
you're,
is.
yes.
but that's how you're blindsided.
Yeah.
You're thinking whatever they're
Right.
saying.
Yeah, and
Literally happened 10 years, 11 years ago, and it was a decade ago, and I'm still dealing with the repercussions of it, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, trauma.
Mhm.
Yep.
Thank you for asking the question. Support groups are good to get through because, you know, Allie went through trauma, but so did you.
Yeah.
So,
That's on my next year's list.
Yeah.
It's not,
Oh.
I mean, Alyssa got the brunt of it, but it's far on the whole family.
It sure
I'm
is.
sure.
It absolutely is. I have a few more questions too. I'm glad to see so many questions coming in. I feel like there is such a fine line between physical and psychological abuse. On the psychological side, how do you differ your advocacy?
I don't think
good
there's a
question.
difference in how we advocate, because we know that with every type of abuse, there is psychological and mental abuse. It's all part of the package, and the advocacy is the same. We always offer therapy sessions. We have a contracted therapist that we work with. We offer therapy sessions. We offer a support group that I facilitate. We offer anything and everything to help them move through the pain, the guilt, the fear, all of those things, to give them their power back so that they can move on and be that survivor.
Well, and depending on what they've been told for the last however many years,
Right.
they're all going to come in thinking that they're crazy, that this isn't as bad, or because of the minimizing and everything and the gaslighting. But at the end of the day, if they can make it to the support groups, they're going to start hearing the same things. There was a story about they put a microphone or something in the air duct,
Mhm.
and the
Every
lady
time
thought
the
she was
HVAC
crazy.
System, yeah.
Yeah, the HVAC system. And it's like, I would think I would like, that could happen to anybody.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's a lot more common than folks think.
Well, and lots of reassuring, there is a kind of a stigma that domestic violence is only physical. So to just reassure someone, hey,
Yeah.
that is very real. That does have
And he
very
didn't
real
hit me, so
impacts.
it's fine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, even just to tell someone you didn't deserve that, that wasn't okay, is huge sometimes.
Okay. We have a lot.
Well, and I would like to point out that when folks come in and meet with Mary Gay too, there's our equality wheels that we go over, and they can learn about the different types of abuse and be like, oh, that fits me and that fits me. And then on the other side, show what it's actually supposed to look like in a healthy relationship. And that's important because they may have never seen that in their entire life.
And we have those resources on our website if anybody wants to look at those resources. In response to some of the things you all said, Jared said, yes, it took me 30 minutes sitting in my car fighting with him in my head on if I was abused enough to be taking a space in a safe house.
Yeah.
And we do get that a lot.
Mhm.
you know,
There's other people that need it.
Need it
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
That's
And
unfortunately
that's not
common.
true. So we're glad you did seek help, Jared. In response to Allie's mom, I went back to protect my family one time. When I talked to family members, I explained my side. We just need someone to be there. When our eyes are finally open, we will reach out. Unfortunately, sometimes we don't get that chance. So that's from a survivor. And then Sabrina, I've had friends in different domestic violence situations. There's a question here. Verbal abuse, physical abuse when drinking, and recently a high school friend who was killed by her estranged husband. Are there any warning signs that I can be aware of to tell when a relationship is changing from non-physical abuse to physical abuse to possibly being killed?
Lethality assessments for community members.
Yes.
We have lethality assessments, and generally the more that folks score on this, it'll show the more likely that folks are, well, for it to end lethally. They're natural. We just talk about it. It's not like we just go down a survey. So, but we, you know, do they have a weapon? Did they just lose their job? Are their kids present?
Is it escalating?
Yeah.
The abuse escalating?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do they abuse their pets?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a big one too.
Damage property, you know.
Damage property? Isolate you away from family and friends?
You know, and if those warning signs are there already, you know, if they're controlling and trying to isolate, et cetera, that's a good warning sign to just start off with, because a lot of it, for it to escalate to physical, it will always start with that first.
And I think we can learn a lot too from the recent Gabby Petito case too. That the signs were there, that the video that came out from the police officer, she was taking the blame, he was doing the good old boy laughing, oh, she's just crazy, you know, and it went from her blaming herself to probably, from the timeline, being very soon after.
That literally just happened
strangulation
today.
and death. So,
That happened with yours. The one that was like, the cops keep getting called, but they don't, he always comes out and
they
says,
don't do anything
Yeah.
else, so that was a good question.
Yeah.
Sabrina, and I'm sorry about your high school friend, it's really
mhm.
horrible to see. Lori says warning signs and our power and control behaviors, not letting you alone or keeping track of you all the time. It may sound or feel loving, but it can be them tracking you. There may be there are many such red flags. And then narcissists use multiple control tactics. Sometimes it's not even physical. Absolutely.
Mhm.
And Jared said, true, it got to the point he didn't have to hit anymore. He just had to threaten it. And these are all just things we see.
Mhm.
When it comes, I've got a good question that I think is the age-old question, but let's answer it for those listening, especially in shelter. So for Perdita and Jillian, who work with our shelter clients very closely, what do you say when one of our clients comes to you and says, I can't take this anymore, I'm just going back home, I'm going back to it? What do you say?
And then what? Got a lot of that, a lot of thinking it through, and you know, I'm not going to tell you not to. It does take, as we discussed, it does take 7 tries. Sometimes it's not that easy. But thinking it through with them, thinking, okay, what could we do to make sure you're safe this time? Little steps, we do safety planning a lot. And thinking out what exactly that might look like.
Yes, and then I think reminding that you can always call us back, because a lot of times
Yeah.
we'll always say, okay, but if anything happens, you know where to call us, and we'll always be here. So I think we've had multiple clients who've come back, you know, and they come and
Very
tell us.
well.
So
Yeah,
very,
repeat
very,
clients.
And doing that judgment free.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Not judging about going back. Does anybody here have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Well, first, I want to say thank you to our advocates for all that you do, because you're amazing. And I know it's a hard job and it takes a big part. So thank you for that first.
Thank you.
From the community, I would like to know, what are some of the hardest things for you that you need that you can't get from your community? What are those barriers? Is it legal? Is it housing? What things do you need more of in your community to support ATV?
Oh my gosh, I bet we all love that question.
No, we are a nonprofit, so we need funding.
funding.
True.
Yes, we need case managers.
And
we
I
need
know an
housing.
election is coming up. And if you live in a community where domestic violence is not identified and talked about a lot, then you need to look at those people that are up for election and look at their backgrounds, look at what they support and what they don't support, and vote for the person that you know will help get domestic violence awareness out there and help us to eliminate it. There's that old societal whatever that domestic violence is a family matter, that domestic violence is just someone who lost their temper, and that's bunk. That is the lie that we tell ourselves so that we don't have to talk about it because it's uncomfortable. And the reality is, during the pandemic, domestic violence happened more because they were trapped with their abuser, could not leave. And though we could not reach out to them, those that could, we did our best to help them plan, because they're in that situation, how to stay safe, how to avoid confrontation, how to do those kinds of things. The reality is, it happens. 1 in 3, drive down your street, that third house, domestic violence is happening. Count off by 3s.
A big obstacle that we see too in just the safe house side of things is mental health.
Yep.
There's not a lot of places to go for mental health help, especially if you're kind of in that in-between phase of I can take care of myself, but I need just that little bit of extra help. I mean, our clients have been through so much sometimes. So to come out mentally healthy is impossible.
It's hard.
Well, standard across the board for Larimer County, let alone our clients that we serve are facing these barriers on a whole nother level. Daycare is huge. Affordable daycare is huge. Affordable housing for anybody.
She does housing.
Housing.
She's very passionate about it.
I also can't buy a house. So I'm mad. But affordable housing is really hard for anybody here, but it's one of the biggest challenges for folks that are leaving because they don't want to be homeless, as Amanda was saying, and they will go back to their abuser if they're not able to find housing. And it's just one of those obstacles and challenges, and depending on what credentials they may have, they may not be, and if they were forced to only stay at home, now they don't have any work history. If they don't have access to finances, they didn't have a savings that they like an emergency fund to use. So there's a lot of different pieces that come with that, but housing, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the major issues.
And it's just a broken system
It
in
is.
general. And if anybody hasn't, I will recommend it from the perspective of somebody who runs a domestic violence shelter to watch the Netflix show Made. Because
It's actually very accurate.
Very accurate. In challenges that people face. And coming from those of us who were in that work, it was very impressive watching how accurate it was. And what hit me the most is when she finally left and went to a social worker and was trying to get housing. She finally said 2 things. She said, the social worker said, "Did you report it?" She said, "And what? Say he didn't hit me?" Which is a hard thing. And then second, to get housing, she had to, so this is the summary, to get housing, she needed a job. To get a job, she needed daycare. To get daycare, she needed the job to pay her portion of the daycare. And it's just a screwed up system. So
we are fortunate here in Larimer County to have CCAP, which is they allow for work search activities, which is great because they don't have to have a job yet. They can have the kiddo in daycare and pay for a portion until daycare is obtained, or I'm sorry, a job is obtained, and then they can go for longer periods. That doesn't happen everywhere. It actually, we only got full access for low income folks because of COVID. Before that, it was only TANF, which means you couldn't have a job. You had to be making the bottom of the barrel to even qualify. And so when COVID happened, I know COVID's terrible. We all know that. but there were some good things that came out of it. And that was one of them.
Well, and even just the little things you don't think about. I mean, car repairs, cell phones. There's not a lot of
Cell phones.
resources for those things.
Yes, there's a
If
lot
you
of
have
other
any
I
old
think
cell phones.
Jillian and I always have a conversation that we're so surprised Loveland doesn't have a homeless shelter or a family shelter. Because then, you know, we're like, yeah, we're like right there where our families, they get a job and they do so good. And then 8 weeks after, they're like, now where am I going to a whole different county? And then they're like, now I don't
Start
have a
over.
transportation. Like, what do I do with my job? What do I do with my kids' school?
Yeah.
So, you know, we're always stumbling upon.
A follow-up
Have that.
question to that is, when there are children in the shelter and it's school time, how do they, where and how do they go to school?
Good question, actually. Brigitte, can you answer that?
How do they get connected to school, Lori? Was
They
that?
get to
Yes.
school.
Do they stay
So-
in the same school? Do they, like, what do you do? How do you protect them in the school from somebody trying to come in and out?
So for our Loveland, we do have a school liaison that does the entire paperwork with coming to our office. So that the mom gets one-on-one time to meet with the liaison, explain the domestic violence situation. They kind of have all the paperwork ready and explain school the entire thing. The only person who gets to pick up the kids is the mom. If there is anything that someone shows up at the school, please notify the mom. Even when the school call us, we're just like, we can't confirm or deny. We are to the part of like, we have nothing to do beside working with the liaison. But we have a couple of our moms that say, you know, we don't want to move their county. So we just want to keep them where they are right now. I will go pick them, drop them off. So at that point of time, I think we do a lot of safety planning and saying every school does have a certain liaison that can help you with that process. And then explaining their legal rights and connecting them with their legal advocates to say, here are a couple of things that just talk with them so that you have an idea. And school bus routes are very, very helpful, that they're very, very aware with the confidentiality policy of ours, that they have a very different time for setup of transportation for providing services.
Well, and to elaborate on that, there's already, and I don't remember when it was enacted, but it's called the McKinney-Vento Act.
I
And
was
it's,
just gonna say.
yeah, so there's the McKinney-Vento Act that's in every school district. Some are obviously more robust programs than others. However, the point of that is to keep kiddos in their school of origin. And so if there is a kiddo from Weld County that came to our shelter per se, Weld County would come and get them from the shelter, or because there's actually just a huge bus driver shortage, they've also been offering gas cards and other pieces if the family has transportation. If not, they will figure it out. And between Poudre and Loveland, the two school districts will try to come up with a route that works. Is it the most convenient? Sometimes no, because sometimes the kiddos got to get up, like I'm talking 5 a.m. because their pickup is at 6. Oh, I'm sorry, is that a good time for
It's
you?
too early for her.
It's too early for most people. So that
These are
exists.
Great conversations. I have more questions, which Fiona asked, and Fiona, we appreciate this, and I ask them all the time. How do you as advocates take care of yourself? I know you touched on it a little bit, but just in general, how do you take care of yourself?
Really dark humor.
I just
Really, really bad humor, appropriate only in certain settings.
I spoke at an event in a group last night. They asked me this question because everybody does, and I said, I'm just inappropriate.
Yes.
Humor.
Consistently outside of work.
I
make
think
fun of
even
each other a
inside
lot.
work, we try to keep it very light
Light,
and
yeah.
uplifting. And we always say that that's so much needed because especially when I'm even explaining to the other clients or, you know, newcomers that we have, or like everyone, I said, do you know, we just took a call, and then the advocate, if someone says, I got a job, has to jump and laugh with you within 3 seconds of just taking a call that probably had an intense rape case for a child. So I said, it's that. So every time at work, we try to keep it so light, and we always, I think, make each other laugh a lot.
That's our-
Appropriately,
that's our key.
inappropriately.
Yes.
Yes.
Inappropriately timed.
It does.
Good answer, y'all.
I do want to add that supports outside of work are also
Huge.
very
Yeah.
important. We are, while we may be very close, this is not the end all be all. Not to say
I was
that you
gonna
guys
say,
aren't.
ouch.
Ouch.
I need an advocate.
See?
Jared said, I live with PTSD and severe anxiety. We lived for almost a year in our first apartment with the door barricaded. Still working on trying to be able to leave my house more because most days I still cannot. Jared did a piece with the USA Today in the Colorado one last year that gives insight as well. So some of you all it happened in the article was in the middle of COVID. So Jared,
Okay.
thank you for doing that. It was a good article and I will share it with our staff as well.
Fun.
And you are a survivor and your kids are very lucky. So thank you for joining us tonight, even though I'm not on the camera to say that. We appreciate it. Here's another good question. Jared also said, I find one thing every day that was good. Some days are harder than others, but there's always something good. And that's good also. And now I'm going to ask you a question in a minute, but I'm going to pop back to one more question from Laura, this is a good question. Addiction, I'm sure it is so prevalent. How do you all handle people coming in that are in active addiction?
Don't look at me like that.
Jillian.
Harm
We
reduction.
work with them. Harm reduction. You love harm reduction.
I do
Any of our
love
social
harm
workers
reduction.
can talk about harm
Jesse.
Yeah. So we always, so if someone's in an abusive situation, we're not going to say you can't come into shelter or get into housing because you have an addiction.
It's common.
Yeah,
It's
it is very common. And for multiple reasons. Sometimes abusers keep their, will keep our clients high on purpose. So they can't say we're in this room, we're in this state, whatever, what have you. Sometimes maybe that's how the partnership started. Maybe they use substances together. Or maybe that's a boyfriend that's a dealer. And now they're really close and entangled, but now to keep the substance and addiction going, they're now staying with this partner, despite those challenges. Nonetheless, at any stage, and no matter what drug it is, we always take a harm reduction approach, and we wouldn't keep them again from accessing services or housing, but it's always this seed planting, right? We plant so many seeds, and when the clients are ready, they will come around to that piece when they make that choice. But, we can talk about it. We can have the conversations. Harm reduction really just states, taking the harm out of what they're currently doing and making it less. So if you're drinking vodka all day long, well, what if we tried not drinking until noon? Or maybe we could start by drinking beer all day long instead.
Not in shelter.
Yeah, I was about to say like,
Yeah,
okay,
it
a little
is
bit
different in
Jesse.
Sorry, housing.
In shelter.
It looks different. Yes.
Yes.
When somebody comes in who's addicted, what do you
So
do now?
it's honestly insanely common. It's just for all those reasons Jesse just said, and just as a coping mechanism. I mean,
Well, and Jared just said
Self-medicating.
mine was my coffee with meth, so I couldn't judge him, you say.
yeah,
So,
yeah, absolutely. And it's if we told people, if we just wrote people off and couldn't help them for that, we would not help very many people. So we definitely work with them, and because of our shelter environment, we do have a lot of recovering users and a lot of children. So obviously that can't really happen in the house. So if that does come up in shelter, we'll just sit down with them and we'll say, hey, this can't happen again, but how can we help you get through it right now? Do you need resources? Do you need to go to a meeting? Do you need therapy? Do you need methadone treatment? Whatever it is, whatever substance it is, we try to work with them on that and help them through it.
Yeah, I think it's more having a very non-judgmental but very respectful communication to say like, hey, this is where we stand, and I hope you guys can follow the policies while you're here, but at the same time we're here to meet you in the middle. So we have like couple of our clients that actually do call us and will say, we relapsed, we're not coming back today, but I just want to let you know I'm safe and I'll see you tomorrow. And we'll be saying, thank you for doing that. So I think,
call us when you feel like coming back.
yes.
Yeah.
So those are,
We'll
I
hold
think,
your root for you.
yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
here's a great question, and thank you for joining us. How is shelter placement in Colorado? I'm an advocate for domestic violence victims in Los Angeles, California, and it has been such a struggle to find shelter placement for them. If so, why do you think it's a current issue?
there are not enough shelters.
No, it's
Period.
just a very prevalent issue, and obviously the higher population
Yeah.
that you have. I mean, Denver probably faces the same issue, but Los Angeles, I can't even imagine. Cannot.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking, you know, we get calls who
Yeah.
have obviously called 5 shelters already and all of them are full. And so are we sometimes, and we are usually full. I try to be optimistic, but we're usually full. It's not easy to tell people that, but you know, it's incredibly challenging and there's just not enough options for them.
I mean, and we've sat on the phone probably for 20, 30 minutes and given folks the name,
Yeah.
location and number for all the places in Colorado outside of our direct area, because they're just trying to find a place. Jesse?
Yeah, question on that. Is there like a community outreach program referring to that, like such as emergency foster care, where there's placement with families that have the extra room? Is there anything like that?
There should be.
Started.
Yeah,
I mean, there's really people that extra room inside their house.
Yeah.
That they can go through programs like you guys all have yourself.
That's not a bad idea. One thing that I would caution folks is because if the abuser finds them, it puts that whole household in jeopardy. Right.
Also, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Right. You're right. There is.
Oh, okay.
They're still out of there. A lot of people will take the shelter, their abuser has been arrested, and those might be.
Yeah,
better,
that'd be
better
perfect.
Yeah.
Situation for people who have nowhere to go, but are still in need because they've been controlled. They've been.
We could talk about nonprofits.
So
stuff
yeah,
later.
we might.
Yeah, talk to that boy.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there's more questions here, but that's interesting and talking about it, I think it's an issue. Oh, I got a thing that said we can't hear the questions. What do you want to summarize what Jesse just said?
Oh, yeah. Jesse just asked if there was a system that was in place similar to foster care where there's actual homes that have rooms that would be able to take in victims of domestic violence.
I think
Which is a good idea.
In life, sir.
Yeah.
Carrie's already
Yep.
together after this.
Yeah.
Because shelter is an issue, and we really,
Mhm.
we're talking about what the community can do. If
It-
we had further funding for hotel stays for those who are
Yeah.
not in imminent
Danger.
danger,
Mhm.
but still needed help. that
Right.
would be really helpful.
Yeah, and it would divert the folks that are in shelter that could benefit from that, whereas other folks that are in high lethality situations where the perp has not been arrested, it would just free up more of those spots. So I think that's a swell idea personally.
Yeah, absolutely. Jara asked what
Yeah.
she can do to educate more within the community.
Sorry, I was gonna ask him if he wanted a board position because Mary Gay
I told
suggested.
Lori.
it. Oh, yeah.
Sorry,
told
we're
Lori
hiring
to
folks
talk.
over here.
Yeah, we're doing board recruitment right now.
So what can I do to educate more in the community? And my saying that I say to everybody, so I'll say this, is the more you know.
Mhm.
Talk about it, don't keep.
Talk
looking at-
Yeah.
talk to other people. Let them know your story.
Mhm.
Let them
Which
know.
Allie is a good example of that. It's
Yes.
her platform for.
Exactly.
This is-
Let
this
them
is-
know.
Which this is what I'm saying, right?
Let them know what's available.
Yeah, talk about it, especially Jared, tell your story. So-
Tell your story. Let people know what's available in the community. Tell them that you were here tonight and this agency can help.
Yeah.
You know?
Because not a lot of folks are aware and not a lot of folks realize the, I would call it a pandemic in and of itself, but I think it's termed epidemic, but the epidemic of domestic violence is really rampant.
I think that's a big part of it too. Just be aware that it
It exists.
could be right next door. I
It
mean,
does
it's
exist.
very real.
Yes.
It's very close. It's everywhere.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Do we have any more questions? Anybody here? Anybody online? Those were really good questions. I'm gonna walk over here. Amanda, can you look at that just to see if anybody else does? So, thank you to everybody. I know I'm like the voice behind the camera, so I thought I would just
But
come
you're
up
the
now
face of
for
the
those
agency,
that are-
Carrie.
That are here. Just.
Someone asked if there were volunteer opportunities.
Okay,
Amanda. So let me just say that, yes, we have volunteer opportunities, both working with clients directly and not working with clients directly, depending on your level of comfort. And there are trainings required with those volunteer opportunities, but it is well worth it because you learn so much about who we work with in that. So if you are interested in volunteering, I am going to put in the chat box our web address, thank you, with the link. It can go straight to the volunteer piece, so you can fill out an application. Once I receive your application, then I will email an individual to set up an interview through Zoom, so it's virtual. And that's just so we can get to know you a little better, get to know us to see if this is a good fit. And then we talk about what opportunities we have. So yes, most definitely that. Let me put that in the chat box.
Awesome. And just finishing up, I want to thank our staff for being here tonight to answer questions because they work long, hard days. So thank you for coming tonight. We
Thanks,
actually have
Bob.
staff who are still working. Thank you especially to Allie and your family for coming as well.
Thank
And
you.
to those who joined us, we're always available for questions, phone calls, reach out to us, Google the number, give us a call, go to our website.
You can text
and
us too.
Yeah.
We have a
We
new
do
text
have a
line.
good text line. The number is 970-669.
5157.
5157. And actually that has become a very popular
Mhm.
way for people to get a
Yeah.
hold of us. Yes.
We had one
Amanda?
last question from Fiona. Fiona stated, I'm a sexual assault response coordinator in the military. And I would like to know if you work with NOVA. It's hard getting face-to-face training. Fiona, I'm not sure what NOVA is. Josh,
Tech
we
person?
do have an intern who's in the military, so I'm looking at them, but I'm not sure what NOVA is.
He has a look like
but-
he doesn't either.
Yeah,
I'm
so
curious.
obviously, Fiona, we don't work with them, but we do work with COVA, which is the Colorado Office of Victim Assistance. We work very closely with them, and we work closely with other grant agencies like the Domestic Violence Program and what's the
Island Voc- Oh,
and
Well,
that
Voca's
is-
funding for
Voca's
everybody.
CVC.
CVC.
Crime Victims
Compensation. So we work with all of those.
Yeah.
we have a lot of acronyms.
So thank you.
Thanks for joining us, Fiona, and everybody on there. So we'll let everybody go, but spread the word.
Thanks for
Good way.
being here.
Thank you.
Thank you all for being here.
I know.
Great, Jillian.
That's the
Good,
quietest
all of
I've ever
you.
known of you.
Yeah, I know. I don't like being.
My daughter does the same thing.
Yeah, so, but then I'm.
Fidgety.
Yeah.